And welcome back to Bay Sunday. Please welcome TJ Woodward, author of Conscious Being, Awakening to Your True Nature. TJ, thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So how do you awaken yourself?
Well, you know, to me, the awakened life is really about a state of more clarity, a higher degree of presence. In my book, Conscious Being, the subtitle is Awakening to Your True Nature. So in my work that I've done, and certainly in my own personal journey, I feel that we come into this world really whole and perfect and connected with Source, and then we begin to forget. We get taught all sorts of things about, you know, disconnection, about fear, competition. So this is really about waking up to our true nature.
And what types of people need to be awakened? You talk about a little bit of your personal experience, but when you see people out there, who needs to be awakened?
Well, I think any of us that want a life filled with more love and connection, and I can't think of anyone who doesn't want a life of more love and connection. The issue that I see with most of us is we're on this outer search for that. You know, I work in the field of addiction recovery, and that's a more dramatic example of looking outside of ourselves to try to find love and connection, when really it's an inner journey.
And in this book that you recently wrote, are there practical steps, especially for the audience who's watching right now, practical steps that they can take to awaken themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, my intention for the book, I use a lot of my own personal journey of awakening. I was absolutely asleep. I was reactive to the world. I felt like I was being bounced around. So I use a lot of my own personal journey. Also some deep metaphysical principles. I think sometimes I'll read a metaphysical or a spiritual book and I have to reread the paragraph multiple times. So I wrote it with the clear intention of having, it's just like we're having a conversation about it. And there are some practical tools for unlearning some of the stories and the beliefs and the limited thinking so that we can tap into this life of infinite potential.
And I know you've worked with a lot of people, you've talked to a lot of people trying to awaken their inner spirit. When you think about those kinds of people and the people that you've worked with, who are some examples, or without getting into specifics about their names or anything like that, who are some people that you've worked with that come to mind?
I think it's anyone that is trapped in the thinking mind. And what I mean by that is, you know, I feel like we come into this world whole and perfect, connected with who we are. If you look at a really young child, there's awe, there's presence, there's wonder. They're really living in the moment. And then we get taught all these things and we begin to forget that essential truth. So anyone that's trapped in the reactive mind, anyone that's suffering from any kind of addiction, most of the time for people, there's an event that happens in their life that really helps them to wake up. The loss of someone, the loss of a job, maybe the kids leave home, and it's an opportunity or a doorway after these periods of loss to really, how do I really want my life to look and live in an intentional way?
And your foundation, Awakened Living, you have many different groups that you work with. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Awakened Living is our spiritual community in San Francisco. We meet every Sunday morning at the Hotel Rex in Union Square. It's a 21st century movement for people who are spiritual but not religious. And what I mean by that is, you know, religion is wonderful for a lot of people, but there's a huge segment of people that have sought religion, and they're looking for a deeper meaning in their life, deeper connection. So Awakened Living is a place where people can come and really explore that unlearning process to return to this essential nature.
And in your book, you talk about true nature. Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, again, it's like we come into this world with this awe, this presence, this curiosity about life, and then we get taught all sorts of things by maybe unconscious people that are well-meaning, you know, the tall people in our lives when we're really young. And this is really, to me, awakening to our true nature. I call it the great remembering, because it's not about attaining or about learning or striving for. So many of us have done that for years, and it really doesn't work. So it's about waking up and remembering that essential self.
You talked about your personal journey, and is there a struggle that you had to deal with when you were a child, when you were a young adult, that inspired you to kind of seek more information about awakening?
Yes, yes, and yes. When I was 7, I had the experience of closing off. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a profound experience. I became terrified and afraid of the world. And I walked around from age 7 to age 14, really shut down, closed off, and afraid.
Why is that? Why were you afraid?
You know, I don't know exactly what was happening in my life, but I remember it was as if it was happening to me. It was a sensation of closing off. What I know now from my more awakened adult perspective is that that was a mechanism that I used to protect myself. Then I just, I practiced my own addiction from age 14 to 20. I got clean and sober almost 30 years ago now, and that was really the beginning of my awakening process.
Well, TJ Woodward, we want to thank you for joining us here on Bay Sunday. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And for more information about conscious being, awakening to your true nature, log on to tjwoodward.com. That is tjwoodward.com. We'll be back with more Bay Sunday after this break.